not for you.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ninja Coffee, where we talk about random stuff and drink coffee. Yeah, so in today's episode we are going to talk about who would win a fight between two legendary martial arts actors, action stars. And to do this, I thought I would need some help from my friends, my two martial arts nerdy, geeky friends here. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Name's Ash.
My name is Michael.
Yes, I think you guys know Michael.
I think you know me by now.
Yeah, he's Michael.
I'm Michael.
And he's Ash, my little brother. Okay, so just before we start, I want to say, even from when I was 10 years old, this question was always on my mind. Who would win a fight between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren? And I was a huge fan of both these guys, and I watched probably all their movies. And there was something very fascinating with these exact two martial art actors, because you had a lot of the action stars like Arnold and Sly, but Jean-Claude and Dolph appealed more to me because they were also legit martial artists. So, we have to find out who would win a real fight. Okay, or any kind of fight. That's what we'll get to that. So, we should start with their background, right? Okay. Who do we start with? We're going to tell you all we know and all we've researched and found out about both of these guys. Van Damme first?
Van Damme first.
Okay,
so one of the biggest problems with Van Damme was that we didn't really have any footage on his fights. There is no footage. There's some from his point fights, but so we looked into his wiki page, and there's tons of light contact and point fights, and there's some full contact fights there, but there's an issue with those full contact fights. From what we've understood based on interviews, they're kind of full contact, but not really. They're not like actual kickboxing fights. They're point fighting fights with knockout, and he won quite a few of them with knockout. So we started looking deeper into any kind of footage of him just displaying any kind of technique, and we all know his kicks are great, but we found quite a few sparring takes where he's just playing around, and you can tell he knows how to guard, when to guard. He knows how to combine both arms and both legs. We found some footage of him just displaying some boxing techniques, and it's not bad, it's decent. You can tell his style is kind of the predecessor of what's kickboxing today. It's like the prototype kickboxing kind of thing, which was karate.
Yeah, and all his fights, they were in the 70s, or 70 crossing over to 80. I think it was maybe between 77 and 1980.
Something like that.
Something like that. And that's, the karate back then was different. As I said, it's full contact karate. It ended with knockouts. But he's been criticized by the American kickboxers that there's no footage, there's no proof that he's a kickboxer in the same regard as the professional kickboxing we know with Don the Dragon and Benny Urquidez and that type. But yeah, it all seems legit.
But it seems more like the light contact style, which isn't very light, to be honest. It's very close to the full contact style, but they don't pull their hips all the way through, and they don't put as much power behind their punches. We found one footage of him fighting, just sparring with a friend of his. It's this long interview, and you can tell he knows the kind of old school kickboxing style, and you have also that one footage where he's
training with an MMA guy, and he kicks him to the head. Cody something.
Really good feint, and you can tell he knows how to combine punches and kicks, and he
Chained
knows
up combinations.
when to go to a guard to return across and do the it was a feint, then a round kick to the head. Like, he knows the in-fight and the mid-range, and we definitely know he knows the long-range distance because we have the karate takes with the point fighting, and we know it from the basic techniques he does in his movies.
Yeah, good footwork on him.
Very good footwork.
All right. Anything?
No, I think that...
Yeah, or you, Mikey, do you have anything you want to add on this?
No, I think it's mostly said. He has
His degree.
he has a second degree black belt in Shotokan Karate, which is not easy to obtain either.
At least not back then.
No.
Yeah. So that's Van Damme. And then we have Dolph Lundgren. You want to introduce our friend Dolph?
Dolph is a Swedish karateka. He practices the style of Kyokushin Kai, which is your full contact karate style, made famous by Masuyama, but it's a bit different compared to like the kickboxing because you are not fighting with gloves. You are bare knuckle, and you're only allowed to punch to the body and kick towards that, so there's no punching
to the face. And the footwork is very different from the Shotokan karate.
Yeah, you're very stable. Your weight is very low. It reminds you a little bit about like the Thai style, I suppose. So very powerful. Very much focus on power because it's full contact, and also a lot of focus on absorbing blows. So if you do that style, you're definitely a very tough cookie to deal with. You can take a lot of damage.
And Dolph Lundgren was on the Swedish national team. He was a European champion. He came in second in the World Championships in Japan with Masuyama watching, and Dolph was just a green belt, and he fought black belts.
Yeah.
And he did pretty good, and he came in second, which is just very impressive. And we've seen his fights, and most of the fights end with Dolph knocking someone out with a knee to the face. I think I've also seen one footage when he does a sweep or something, or a kick as well, but I don't remember. That's a long time ago.
You are allowed to do low kicks, so yeah.
His best weapons are the low kick and the knee.
Yeah.
And
kicks in general, I think, is better for him with that height and everything. Yeah.
And he also did a boxing fight when he was older. I think the boxing fight was from 2007, so it was in his 50s. Nine, yeah, maybe possibly. 2009. I mean, he's not a boxer, and you can see that when he's fighting, but he was relaxed in there. He was using his jab a lot. His chin was up a little bit, and his guard wasn't as high as it should have been.
Especially when he was attacking.
And when he was attacked close, Oleg Taktarov would sometimes land something to the head before Dolph would cover up. So he's not comfortable fighting backwards, and he was not like he was a one-handed fighter.
Yeah, he had no firepower, no real firepower.
And definitely slower than Van Damme.
Much slower.
Much slower.
Mm-hmm. And Van Damme's best weapon, without a doubt, is the rhythm and movement, and also the kicks.
And also his speed.
Yeah, in this case, the speed is superior to Dolph's. Okay, so anything else to add on Dolph?
It's also worth mentioning Dolph is a lot bigger than Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So their weights.
Summarize the weights and heights.
So Van Damme was
80,
around 80 kilos and 1 meter and 77 centimeters. I don't know in any other measurements what that would be.
77, 78, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and Dolph was it was different. Some places said meter, 96 centimeter, and in some places he was around 2 meters. And he was, depending on when we're talking about, he was around 100 to 120 kilos.
Something like
So
that.
100 to 118 kilos was the heaviest we found. And I think that was when he was...
But he was even lighter when competing.
Yeah, way lighter, probably around 90 kilos.
kilos, yeah.
So when he bulked up, that was when he was...
Doing the movies.
doing Rocky 4, he got told by Sly that he had to bulk up. And he bulked up even more for the He-Man movie.
Yeah.
So let's assume that his like fight normal weight is around 100 at most, probably.
So they would never be in the same weight class.
That's also very important to mention. These guys would not fight each other in
In a traditional ring.
yeah.
There's also another thing. We should mention that both of them actually have kept on training. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme, even to this day, in his new
shape.
He's still in shape physically, and his technique is still crisp as it ever was. While, in my opinion, Lundgren has become somewhat less technical. His kicks aren't as flashy as they used to be, but he's still training karate, so we know he's sparring, and he's probably updated on his Kyokushin Kai.
Yeah, and then I watched this interview with him from not too long ago, and he said that whenever he was in Sweden, he would go and visit his old Kyokushin Kai karate gym and train with his like old club. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, both these guys train and try to stay in shape. Of course, they're older now, but Van Damme's kicks are still like really impressive.
I know, they're insane.
And I thought they were, there is Van Damme is younger. I thought it was like 5-6 years between them, but it's only 3 years. But I would say, based on what I've seen, normally Van Damme is in better shape. All right. What else do we need to mention about
I think
this?
we've got it all
Yeah.
covered. Van Damme has a very centered position, like a kickboxer, not like a karate guy, and he's much deeper than a karate guy.
Do you guys remember anything from his record? He had a karate record with 1 loss, was it?
And the one that they described as
disqualified.
kickboxing. Yeah, and he had 1 loss, but that was due to a disqualification.
Yeah, and around 19 fights.
Yeah, that was the...
Most of them are with knockouts.
That was a full contact fight.
That was his kickboxing record.
His kickboxing light was a lot longer. It was like 30, 40 fights.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So decent.
So it's just based on everything we've researched, it's safe to just assume they're both legit fighters.
Yeah.
Okay, so we thought we could do this a little bit interesting. So we're going to go through different styles that they will fight in. So what we were thinking was just their own style. So Kyokushin Kai, Shotokan, kickboxing, regular kickboxing, and then also K1 kickboxing and boxing. We're not going to do any ground
None of
fighting.
None
Of them know any ground fighting that we know of. And who would eventually win, a street fight or something that would resemble like everything goes like first UFC rules, street fight basically.
Yeah, UFC 1.
UFC 1. So, where do you guys want to start?
We could just...
Start with the Shotokan.
Shotokan, Jean-Claude would beat him 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the speed will give him an advantage.
And the technique,
and
the
the
style.
technique, yeah. Shotokan, for those people who don't know, is like point fighting. You hit them, and the judge says stop, and the one who gets the hit first, that is the guy who gets the point.
Oftentimes, the fastest opponent will have an advantage here.
Yeah.
Just also,
The reach.
the reach is, of course, on Dolph's side.
Yeah.
But just a side note here. when we are doing this, should we just try to take both guys in their prime, or like when they were fighting, just
Let's
to not do
take
too
them.
complicated?
Yeah, let's just take them.
At
in
least
time.
for the Shotokan and Kyokushin Kai
Yeah.
ones, we can do that. For the later ones, we could mix it up a bit.
If we would talk about when these guys would fight, that could also be things could change based on if they're fighting when Dolph is around 90 kilos or when he's beefed up for Rocky 4. So there are a lot of factors that come into play. But let's assume for at least the Shotokan and the Kyokushin Kai, it's like back in the early 80s and they're
in their prime.
In the prime when they were fighting. Okay, so yeah. And you were also on...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Van Damme would do well.
10 out of 10?
I'm not so sure 10 out of 10. You never know.
And we watched the Shotokan fight with Dolph as well.
Yeah, he wasn't too bad.
He wasn't too bad. He was doing okay, but if that is Van Damme's specialty...
you definitely have the biggest
advantage.
and most of the fights he would definitely win.
I would also give that one to Van Damme. It's a no-brainer. In a point fighting match, his kicks and his speed will, and just that's
Rhythm.
what he's accustomed to. Yeah, and his rhythm. So
I'm not familiar with Dolph's the footwork because I didn't see the Shotokan fight with him, but
Not much footwork, but a lot of feints. He was good with the feints
he
and
had some
using his
good
reach.
kicks. So
Yeah.
I would say at least doesn't that change the end results. So it's still Van Damme. I would say at least 8 out of 10 I would give to Van Damme. Okay. Case closed. Shotokan, we're all in agreement. Van Damme.
Van Damme is the winner.
Let's move on to Kyokushin Kai. Crash, you can start.
Yeah, if thing is, I suspect Jean-Claude Van Damme's boxing is better than Dolph's. And in Shotokan, your boxing becomes...
Spoiling our later...
Kyokushin Kai, your boxing becomes somewhat useless because you can't punch someone in the head. And then Dolph is specialized in Kyokushin Kai. I mean, he came second world championship, so Jean-Claude Van Damme doesn't stand a chance. So 10 out of 10 to Dolph Lundgren.
And in the first one, the Shotokan fight, I imagine he would land some feints and head kicks. Van Damme would.
Yeah.
And how do you imagine this fight would go? Do you think it would go down with a knee?
I think he would go down with a knee. Or a low kick. Or something like low kick to a knee. Because really, Kyokushin Kai fights often come down to just durability. And I don't think Van Damme is built to fight a Kyokushin Kai fight. He might do well in a kickboxing fight or something like that, but...
As long as he can stick and move.
Yeah, but you can't in a Kyokushin Kai fight. That's the thing, because you can't really punch to the head and do something else. You're stuck with getting close and going to the body.
And here is where it would have been very useful to have had more fight footage on Van Damme. Because we can't say for sure, but none of this is for sure. This is just...
Speculation.
Yeah. Hypothetical. But yeah, I mean, we don't know for all we know. Maybe he would be good in Kyokushin Kai as well. But I agree, like, we know Dolph is really good. Pressures people, knees them to the face, kicks them to the legs. So Dolph.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And you would also think he would... The height difference is also a factor here, where like he wouldn't have to kick higher than mid-height, and that would probably land in Van Damme's face. Yeah. Bucky?
Yeah, I would have the same thing. I think Jean-Claude would rush in with techniques, but I think as he pulls out, he'll get caught by a low kick or he'll be caught by something just because the range is that big. And I fought Kyokushin Kai, so I know that a lot of the boxing, like your jab, the jab goes kind of out the window. It doesn't have any practicality because you can't jab to the face. You have to put more power into it, so it's more like a left straight than a jab. It's not loose like a jab would be. It's much harder to use any kind of movement really because they're very stationary and they're just waiting for you while you're dancing around like a loon. So yeah, definitely give it to Dolph.
Yeah. This is again the same with the Shotokan. It's his specific style. Dolph, I also would say, would probably win this one. The only thing was when he fought the Japanese guy, when the Japanese guy came in with lots of attacks, he was a bit frustrated and he had to move backwards.
But it was a lot of Kyokushin Kai attacks.
That is true. So the only way Van Damme could probably, it's just the same when I said with Shotokan, his reach advantage might help him, so he could kick Van Damme.
It depends a lot because, like you said, the Japanese guy was a lot heavier than Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I don't think he was.
Okay, because it certainly seems like because his attacks have an effect on him and puts him on the back leg.
And that is a huge if anyway, and it's still the change of style from Shotokan to Kyokushin. So it's safe to say also that probably I give this one to Dolph too. Yeah, I give this one to Dolph. So 1-1. Still everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Ska jag hämta dig mer kaffe? Jag kan pausa.
Nej då.
Nej, du är good.
Ja,
Okej. Då bara kuttar jag akkurat detta ut om jag hiver in några klipp. Så bara se pen ut. Okay, so that is Shotokan and Kyokushin Kai out of the way. Which one is next, Fash?
I'd say either kickboxing or boxing.
Let's start with regular kickboxing.
Regular kickboxing. No knees.
No knees.
And you've removed one of Dolph Lundgren's greatest attacks.
And you added something that he's not comfortable with.
And you've added punches to the head. And if we're going back to the 70s or whenever these guys were competing, I fought quite a few Kyokushin Kai guys. And that was kickboxing rules. They were coming to our gym. They're not accustomed to being punched in the head. They'll bring their guard up, but they're like this, and they'll be eating punches. So I think Jean-Claude's boxing would dominate. Also, if is it classic kickboxing?
Classic kickboxing.
Yeah, so you remove the low kick as well. Dolph has lost two of his best weapons against Jean-Claude. So he doesn't have the low kick, he doesn't have the knee to the face. I think Jean-Claude would win this, to be honest.
Would you think it would end on points or knockout?
I do think Jean-Claude has knockout power both in his kicks and possibly in his punches. But we've seen the boxing match with Dolph against Oleg, who was a really good fighter. So I'd say Dolph is tough enough to fight his way through that match anyway. So I don't think Jean-Claude would knock him unless he lands something really good.
This one would be really interesting to watch. I wish I could see this. Both of these guys in their prime fighting a kickboxing
I
fight.
think Jean-Claude would win on points. I'm pretty sure he would win on points.
And if it was a KO, I still think when you don't have the knee, I still believe if someone wouldn't win on a KO, it would be a feint and a kick to the head from Van Damme.
It could be the other way.
It could be the other way. Dolph's kicks were really good as well.
They were pretty powerful, but we saw the kickboxing kicks, which Jean-Claude did, and they looked pretty powerful. Like, we know his kicks are really powerful, but Dolph's weren't too bad either. Like, he's got more mass behind them.
That's true.
I'd say Jean-Claude's boxing is better. His kicks are better. He's faster. He's got more rhythm, so it all is more compatible with traditional kickboxing. So he would win on points, but I don't think either of them would necessarily knock each other out.
So I disagree. I think I don't disagree. I disagree, and I agree. The thing is, I think you're underestimating the height and the weight difference in this. What I think would happen is that he would go in. I mean, John would go in. He would score probably with combinations. Probably, and then he would go out. I think if this goes more than 3 rounds, 6 rounds, classical.
Oh, that's also what we're going for. 3 rounds amateur, or are we going for old school Don the Dragon Wilson style 12 rounds of kickboxing?
I was thinking 3, to be honest.
Yeah, I was thinking 3 rounds originally, but we can go through both.
I think that the hits from Dolph are too heavy. We don't know much about the endurance of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it's worth to point out that all his knockouts is in the first or the second round, meaning they come pretty fast. I don't think he has the ability to knock Dolph
Late.
like very fast.
Mm.
And I think the longer that fight goes on, it favors the bigger guy. So I think if it goes to a point decision, I'm much more willing to give it to John. But I would say that the mass and the power, is like he hits him twice, he gets kicked once. Even if he guards that kick with that size advantage, it's like full power. It's like, oh no. No, I would give the knockout to Dolph without a doubt. So I agree it would be an exciting one because you're kind of taking away the best weapons and giving it to the smaller guy. But I think that the weight difference is too much here.
Yeah.
I just think that the hits John would take from Dolph will be too much. And I know that Dolph definitely can absorb to his body. I don't picture a situation where he will allow John to like just jab his face and attack his face like nothing there. He will punish it somehow. So it will be like this in and out, and every time Dolph connects with something, even if John guards, it will be too much. So I'm more on Dolph's side than Jean-Claude Van Damme. But this is close.
And are we also talking about this is no matter what, even if it's a 3-round fight?
Not in a 3-round. I don't. In a 3-round, I will lean more against John longer than three rounds.
But
I'll give
we
it
should
to
separate
Dolph.
it then.
And there's also another thing here. If we're talking about 70s,
But knockout.
Dolph wouldn't know how to protect his head.
Yeah, but I still don't think he would just allow it. He would
He
rush
still didn't know how
forward.
to protect his head during all the factor of
He would just rush
the
forward
boxing
with
fight,
the
No,
techniques.
but you know how it is fighting Kyokushin Kai guys who haven't boxed. They don't protect their heads.
No.
And when they
that's
do,
true.
they're prone to hooks, and then they try to protect the hooks, and they're prone
But
to
that's
straights.
Mikey's
conclusion
on this, and that's fair. Okay, we can do this as a 3-round kickboxing fight first, then we'll do a 12-round.
Three rounds is points to Jean-Claude Van Damme, but if it goes longer, and if there is a knockout involved, it's not going to come from John. It's going to come from Dolph.
All right. So let's just finish up the 3-round kickboxing. Then we'll do kickboxing, and we can add low kicks, not K1, but let's say low kick kickboxing with 12
That's
rounds.
more like, let's just do that with K1. With,
well, I mean, you see the old school fights with Don the Dragon Wilson and all these guys from the 80s. It was 12 rounds, low kicks but no knees. That would be also an interesting one. We can quickly go through that one before K1, just to make it fair from the whole picture.
Yeah, Dolph would. John would have to be very fast.
We'll get to that one.
Yeah.
So just to make it clear, 3 rounds, kickboxing, no low kicks, no knees, no clinch. I would also agree with Chash here that because he doesn't know how to protect his face, that is just so dangerous. I've sparred with a lot of Kyokushin Kai guys as well, and I would just mess around a little bit, and when we were moving around, I would just do like this. And every time my jab would land to their face, and it would be like, ha! Oh, yeah, that's allowed.
Okay, put your hand forward, like you did, like a punch.
Oh.
Okay. This is what you're doing against Dolph.
It's still the same.
Yeah, but your body isn't behind that one at the same way. This is much weaker than this.
Not that much weaker.
And there's not that much. Well, there
it
is.
is. It would be like that.
But
even
try it on a pad. Try it on a pad. Crouch and punch like that, and stand straight and do like that. There's no comparison.
If you get your power from the ground and up, you can
still
with
the right, with this.
Well, let's say that lands. Bang.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You have a good point, but I still think that.
Also, when you have the height and you're punching up and they go like this, it's just weaker when it's upwards.
Well, then again, you also expose their chin.
Yeah, you do.
And let's say the jab lands, and he would land a kick afterwards, a round kick after that.
No, that's a very fair point.
But like in a kickboxing 3 rounds fight, full contact, I would think Jean-Claude Van Damme would have a good chance to finish it with a head kick or a hard punch to the face, but Dolph might as well. Dolph might also finish the fight with a punch to the face, for all we know. I mean, both these guys have knockout power. They're strong, heavy guys. But I would give this to Jean-Claude based on that you have taken away some of Dolph's best weapons. And for all we have, based on what we've seen, Jean-Claude knows how to kickbox. He knows how to box. He knows how to kick to the head. And he's used to that fight. That's a fight he's done a lot of times. And as you said, he finished a lot of those fights in the first and the second round. So this is very his arena.
Yeah, exactly. He'll go in there by clicking hard and efficient.
Yeah, so Jean-Claude Van Damme. Is it 2-1 or is it 3 in agreement? What did you end up on?
No, it is either way. It's
way.
like 50-50.
50-50. Okay,
So,
still,
yeah.
if we're doing, it's 2 against 1 at most.
So this one goes to
Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude.
So it's 2-1 now?
2-1.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's do kickboxing. 12 rounds, low kicks are in, but no knees.
Yeah, that makes me lean that much more to Dolph.
Just going to say one more thing on the last fight. Why I would think Van Damme would win is that I've seen a lot of Dolph's fights. The thing he would do the most was to try to wait for the attacks and then he would grab. And if you can't grab, that's like, it's a totally different fight from what he's used to from his style. He wasn't the type of fighter that would dance around, jab, cross. And that is what Van Damme would do. Yeah, so let's... We'll do it from left to right.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a bit about Dolph's boxing match. He doesn't have anything but a jab, and he's not... His right leg isn't anchored when he's jabbing. He's standing on his left leg, and he lifts his right leg. So he loses all his power, because the power comes from the ground. It comes from your rear leg, and it goes like a diagonal strut up and supports your arm. So he didn't really have that necessary power. And if we're going back to the 70s when both of these guys were in their prime, he wouldn't have prepared for that all-leg match either, so he wouldn't really know how to guard his face. So
this is back to the different timelines when they would fight.
Yeah.
We're not doing that right now.
If we're back when they're young, I don't think he would have the, like, he wouldn't know, and we're assuming they don't get any prep time to prep for this fight.
No,
so they just go into it willy-nilly.
Yeah, they're just going into this
based on what they know
match
in 1980.
Yeah, and they're just told, this is the rules, fight. I think Dolph is at a very big disadvantage because he doesn't have his clinch, he doesn't have his knee, and he's getting punched in the face all the time, and he's not used to it.
But he's got his low kick now. And
so the low kick is a great advantage, but...
And he's got the longest reach.
That is true.
And he's bigger.
He's bigger, but he's very straight. He's very high up with his chin all the time, even in those old fights. While we found that old video with Jean-Claude where he was teaching that reporter girl how to fight, and the first thing he says, you got to pull your chin down.
Yeah.
And his whole position is always really deep, like a kickboxer or boxer
that was
down
interesting.
Here. So I think Jean-Claude's chin is a lot stronger than Dolph's. Just because of that, despite the weight difference, despite the size difference.
Not the chin in itself, but the positioning of the chin will not expose you to hits.
And even if you get hit down here, your neck's a lot stronger. You have a lot more leeway before you get to that point where you start getting knocked. Because up here, your neck does this whiplash, but down here you have a lot of way to go before you get to there. Now, in my opinion, Dolph's only chance in this fight is wear him down, wear and tear that leg, kick him in the leg. But then there's this other thing. In a much more modern video, the UFC fight, you see Jean-Claude doing a low kick, and in another video, we see him doing a side kick to the leg. So
he did front kicks and side kicks all the time to the legs.
This is giving me the impression he actually knows the low kicks, but when he was taught the low kicks, that's a completely different question. I'm not sure if he knew it back then. So
He doesn't seem to have trained more martial arts. He seems to always be training, but I've never seen him talk about going back to the dojo or going and trying to learn more.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but we don't know.
So he might have learned those low kicks later. What I'm saying is, if he doesn't know low kicks back in the 70s, Dolph's chance is to wear him down, just keep kicking that front leg. Jean-Claude Van Damme's chance is to just keep pushing on with those boxing punches. I still lean slightly towards Jean-Claude, but it's a much more even fight now.
Okay.
Unless he knows low kicks.
But your decision is Van Damme.
Yeah.
Okay. Mikey.
No, I would lean further towards Dolph in a low kick. I think he would go in. I think he would, again, land his combinations. I think they would trade. I think he would win in the trade. I think as he goes out, he gets hit by the low kick, and it's just going to be too much after a while. So I would give this one to Dolph.
12 rounds. That's a lot.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one. The size difference, that adds a whole new element to this. And, I mean, it doesn't happen. This is not something that is... sometimes somebody who's way bigger will tire quicker. Doesn't mean they are... it's not that it is in worse shape, but just relatively, if you have a lot of muscles and a lot of mass, it's easier to tire out than somebody who's very light, very quick and light on their feet. So if he's accustomed to fight with the muscles and his mass and can do 12 rounds, that is a huge advantage when he can kick to the legs. But I would, just based on how they move and what I've seen, I think still Van Damme's rhythm and movement will give him a good advantage in a 12-round fight, because if he can dance around, move, bother Dolph with his own low kicks and maybe some good combinations on the inside, that's going to make it very difficult for Dolph. Based on what we've seen, I haven't seen Dolph be very impressive on the inside, and especially not back in 1980. I'm very 50-50 on this one. Either guy would be able to knock the other one out, but I'm also leaning a little bit towards Van Damme, based that if he lands those head kicks or those punches, it's going to do a lot of damage. He is better at protecting himself than Dolph, because he's used to protecting his head. But I'm like almost 50-50, 55-45, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Okay, so 2 against 1 here.
The winner is...
Well, we
still have quite a few styles
we still have a lot to go through. So I also give this marginally to Van Damme. But again, like, that size difference could matter and just make those late rounds a living hell for Van Damme. And make him, when he's tired, that mass could add some knockouts.
Definitely, and we also know that all the knockouts that Jean-Claude did is fast, right? We don't know, we haven't seen...
But none of these guys have ever gone 12 rounds.
No, but...
Not even Dolph.
Kyokushin Kai is set up in a tournament format so that you're going full contact like many people. So
that's the same with the kickboxing.
Yeah, but
it was also the same format.
Yeah, but he puts them down fast, so he has never tested. We don't know his endurance. That's what I'm saying. We know that Dolph's tough. We know he's tough because he's gone distancing. So we have that information. We don't have that.
Yeah, we wish we had more data on Van Damme.
Yeah.
Okay, K1 kickboxing. You can do knees. Let's say you can do knees to the body and knees to the face.
And you're allowed to clinch for one technique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And low kicks as well.
Yeah. I know my answer.
You can start. Just
Dolph wins.
How and why?
It's as simple as that. He has to knee to his own chest side as height. he doesn't have to go to the head. If Jean-Claude was going to knee him in the head, he would have to do a jumping knee or something.
Yeah.
It's
He
just
has the helicopter.
I mean, now let me just like, okay, I'm just gonna be nice here and say like, oh yeah, Jean-Claude Van Damme knows low kicks and stuff. Using the newer footage we found, and let's assume he knew it back then. Even then, he would manage, he will do well, but as soon as he got close to that boxing range, Dolph, if he even got one opportunity to grab him like this and just pull him down and knee him in the face, it'd be over. There's
where it's based, like, it depends or if they have a gi or not. If they have a gi, he would just grab him like this as he did in the karate.
No
tournament.
gi.
No gi, he would still get
he would still get a good knee in there, and his knees were powerful.
Yeah.
As much as I said his boxing wasn't powerful and he was lacking all the knockout power in his hands, his knees looked really powerful.
Yeah, and it was cool how he grabbed his opponent and leaned them towards the way he was coming up with those knees.
Yeah.
It was really, that was his biggest strength.
So I'm pretty sure that even if Jean-Claude was going to win, it'd be on points. It'd be 3 rounds like K1 today, and he would have to keep his distance and not get hit by that knee and kind of pick his points.
And this is in the ring.
And yeah.
So this is not, you don't have too much space.
So I think he would lose in most instances, and maybe there's a 10-20% chance that he would survive and win on points. That's the only way. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that. It's favors too much of his favorite weapons on top of everything. But I do think it would be a fight, though. I do think so, because, like, Jean-Claude has a much more
all round
with the rhythm, with the dancing and all of that. So I think it would be a fight, but I think in the end it would be Dolph.
I agree. Like, let's say they would fight 10 times. I think most of those fights would go to Dolph, but I can also see how Van Damme might finish one of those fights with a punch or like a hook or an in-fight punch to the face. But again, if they come close, Dolph is going to grab and knee. So when Dolph is grabbing, if he would manage to get a couple of good shots, that could change it. But
he would have to know clinch.
He would know how to clinch, yeah, and that's something.
Can throw something wild even though you don't know how to clinch.
That is true.
No, he could definitely land some. It's not like 10 out of 10. It's not like he's.
And Dolph's boxing would not stand a chance against Van Damme's boxing.
No.
But I also, it's like 70-30 Dolph. So all in agreement here, Dolph. Yeah. I've lost count, but we can count later.
I think it's 3-3 now.
3-3, yeah. Shotokan.
Or is it
Shotokan. No, Shotokan went to
3-2.
3-2 to Van Damme.
3-2 to Van Damme, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So the next one is boxing.
The next one is boxing.
I'm not sure how much time we're going to use on this one. We've said everything.
Still some things to be said.
We could do timelines.
Because here the timeline matters a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Back in the old days, Dolph wouldn't stand a chance. He was too high up with his chin and body and everything. But if we go to 2009 or if it was 2007, whenever it was.
You don't want to go after Rocky IV? After Ivan Drago?
So it seems like, okay, Dolph didn't have any knockout power and he lacked quite a bit of technique, but he had a very good understanding for boxing in that match. And he knew how to protect himself. So whenever he was in danger, he was able to get himself down and protect himself, even if he got hit a couple of times. And he was really good at keeping his cool. He was calm all the time.
That was impressive. When he was in his corner, it was like, what am I going to have for lunch later today? It was very relaxed.
So he has that willpower and that warrior spirit, fighter spirit. So he's got a lot of things a real fighter needs, especially a boxer. I still think Jean-Claude Van Damme's boxing is dominant to his, even in modern day, but maybe much, much closer. Maybe something like 60-40 to Jean-Claude or 55-45 to Jean-Claude. But in a pure boxing match, Dolph's chin was way too high, in my opinion, and that is a big weakness. And he didn't have much more than a left. Sometimes, occasionally a right, but it wasn't a good one. So I'm leaning to Jean-Claude in every instance.
Okay, wait. Doing a 3-round boxing fight or a 12-round? Let's just go for a
simple 3-round.
Simple 3-round, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Jean-Claude's boxing would outbox Dolph, so I'm pretty sure it would look that way, yeah. It would...
Even with the height and the weight difference?
Yeah, because I don't feel like what we have seen that he's using the hands as effective as his other weapons, like his low kicks. Clearly the man can punch. He can probably throw a mean body punch and everything. It's not like it's... but I feel like Jean-Claude is skilled enough to avoid that. I don't think... This is one of the cases where he would be too skilled to be hit by something wild that I think that Dolph would throw, because you saw when he's throwing in the Kyokushin, it's pretty wild, man. It's pretty wild. So I think that John would have be too skilled to be hit by anything wild like that. But of course, it's all, what if.
Speculation.
So he could. Absolutely. He goes in, you make one mistake, and he lands something in the ribs. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. No, but I'm also leaning towards John. So 70-30 towards John here.
It's a bit tricky because of the height difference and the weight, but if you have somebody who can't box and you have somebody who can box, that in itself is a huge advantage. And also the timeline. If they'd fought in the 80s, the weight difference isn't that big, and Dolph doesn't know how to box yet, and he's not used to getting hit to the face, and this is what you're going to do. So yes, because he's not used to getting hit in the face, and Van Damme's boxing is better, I would also give this to Van Damme. If this fight would be with Prep Time in 2010, I'm not sure which one of these guys would win, even though Dolph wasn't that impressive. I don't think he would have been knocked out.
No, not at all.
And he could take a lot of punishment and damage, and didn't seem to bother me. Like maybe even in the 80s, this would not end with a knockout, even though he would get hit to the face a lot. This would be an interesting fight, because it would be skill versus size.
And that's not to say that Dolph doesn't have skill. He obviously
he's
does,
got a lot
but
of
not
skill,
that
but not
skill
in
set.
this arena. In this arena, he's this is not where he's most comfortable. But yeah.
Funny thing is that this is what he's most known for.
Ivan Drago. So I would give this to Van Damme as well. Okay, so all in agreement, Van Damme in a boxing fight. Just look at his movement in No Retreat, No Surrender when he's fighting all the karate guys. He's using uppercuts and using shoulder movements. And his name was also Ivan the Russian, which is really interesting because we've had both these guys playing a Russian named Ivan that was a fighter.
Wasn't that
a bad guy?
Wasn't that before Rocky IV?
Yeah, I think No Retreat,
so.
No Surrender came out first.
Are you saying Sly copied No Retreat, No Surrender?
Or is it after? Maybe no. I think we have to check this out.
We'll have a correction up here.
Yeah, I think it's No Retreat, Surrender. No Surrender, that's first. Yeah, okay, so done. Boxing, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Ivan the Russian. Next one, and I think it will probably be our last one. UFC 1 rules, aka street fight. Gash, you can start.
Yeah, the Kyokushin Kai guy wins.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You have to give us
Elaborate.
details.
Yeah, so we're assuming they're fighting without gloves or really thin gloves since it's UFC 1. Yeah, that's something Dolph's used to. They're allowed to clinch.
They're allowed to wear their gi. If they're horse crazy, at least.
They're allowed to clinch. That's something Dolph's used to. They're allowed to low kick a knee. That's something Dolph's used to. I mean, and some of those UFC 1 fights are really quick that they end before they even get started.
Yeah, usually that's how street fights are. They don't last that long.
And that also goes into Dolph's favor because of his greater size, reach, and weight. I'm not saying he would win every one of those, because if Sean just got 1 or 2 in and Dolph got dizzy, he would just keep on punching him until he's down or the referee stops it. But I think Dolph would win like 8 out of 10 at least.
At least. Okay. Wow. I have it a little bit more evened out. Mikey?
No, I think that the weapons that is available for Dolph, and with the size and everything, that it is too much of an advantage towards Dolph. There's so much he can do to neutralize Jean-Claude, like just going forward, being used to hitting with bare knuckles. But again, punch to the face, bare knuckle is not something he's used to either. So
good point.
It's an interesting thing, because a knuckle can really cut you. And I think that if we're taking them when they were competing, the instinct wouldn't be for Dolph to go out there and think, I'm going to hit him in the face. I think he would
kick him,
keep him at a distance, be stable. And if he feels like he's getting hit too much, I think he would start rushing forward, using his knee, grabbing onto him, doing the low kicks. And when you're that much bigger than a guy, you can really just waltz all over him. I feel like he would walk through most of the things, unless he gets in a good job. You get blood in the eye, it's hard to see, John also has these crazy flexibility, so he could throw a kick that could catch him off guard. It's also very easy for someone who's that much taller to maybe, he's a small guy. It's going to be...
you're not used to getting kicked to the head when you're tall. Because you're tall and you're like, and most people don't kick you to the head.
No, and John would definitely
That's what he would try to do.
Definitely kick to the head.
Unless he's watched No Retreat, No Surrender.
Yeah, unless you watch that one. No, but we would have to be like, they don't know anything about each other. They would have to figure each other out.
They would meet for the first time in UFC 1. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
But like Ash said, I would have it mainly towards Dolph. It's probably like 70% Dolph and 30% John.
Could I add 2 things? I just realized my Shotokan gloves, they're really thin, so it's very close to just being bare knuckled. So that is not an advantage, but that is more of an equalizer to Jean-Claude. But then here's the other thing. If they end up on the ground, Jean-Claude doesn't stand a chance. If they knew grappling, it could be a very different game.
But we don't know what they know.
No.
And if they know anything.
But I'm assuming they know the more traditional karate styles. They wouldn't know much grappling.
There are takedowns in Kyokushin.
There are takedowns both in Shotokan and Kyokushin.
There are pinning techniques in Shotokan.
But you just stand above them and do this. You don't actually pin them. You don't actually.
But you don't think, because I don't think the strength. I don't think it's that much of a strength difference between these two guys. I think the size and the mass matters, and the reach advantage matters.
In a grappling match, if you're lighter than the other guy, you're going to get fatigued. Like, no kidding. Just being 20 kilos lighter than the other guy, anytime he's above you, is going to be so much heavier than when you're above that guy.
What if you're stronger? What if
strength matters a lot in grappling?
Hypothetically, if I don't know which one of them is stronger though. I mean, if it's actually 1980 or something, I think maybe Van Damme, because he was already doing the bodybuilding stuff in addition to the karate, and we haven't mentioned his ballet background. He was really strong. I think he would have been physically stronger all rounds.
That is a
and
point.
Dolph.
Because strength matters a lot in grappling. Okay, let's just forget my point then.
But it's still interesting. What would happen if they would go to the ground? They would both get back up again, not want to be on the ground. I don't know.
Cancel the fight, shake hands again.
Okay, so where were we?
Yeah, I would give it to Dolph.
Yeah. I have it way more even than 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. Because, again, both these guys are strong. Van Damme is used to moving around. If he could avoid Dolph's attacks and hits, and he's got the better footwork. Dolph's footwork was always like boom, 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 and he would grab them, kick low kicks. If he would manage to stay away long enough to land a punch or a kick to the head, maybe Van Damme would win. But all in all, I also would say the size and the height difference and the low kicks and the grabbing and kneeing still in a UFC 1 fight, aka almost street fight, would still favor Dolph. But again, how well built is Dolph at this time, and how well built is Jean-Claude Van Damme at this time? What would happen if they would go to the ground? I would have it 60-40 Dolph Lundgren. Yeah. If Dolph kicks him to the legs or knees him to the face, that's it. If Van Damme lands a kick to the jaw or a good punch to the face, where Dolph might not be prepared because of the styles, that could also end things very fast. But all in all, 60-40 Dolph in UFC 1. So where are we now on the points? So I'll count Van Damme here.
Shotokan. There you go.
Shotokan, Kyokushin Kai, Kickboxing 3 rounds, Kickboxing...
Nah, just
Kickboxing?
Nah, just put Kickboxing.
Okay, Kickboxing, Van Damme, K1, Boxing, UFC 1. Really? Are we on 3-3?
Yeah.
But we basically concluded in a real fight, Dolph Lundgren would win. But in a
Let me ask you this: Who do you think would win in a real fight if they were fighting now, tomorrow?
I think Jean-Claude Van Damme is in much better shape at this day and age,
And way faster.
Yeah.
I've seen Dolph do some pad work and some punches and kicks. It's cool and it's not too bad, but he's so much slower than Van Damme right now.
Also, I've seen Van Damme in some of his later movies. He does some grappling and stuff like that. I think he's expanded. Whether he does train at...
Yeah, that's true.
Whether he does train or
in
not, he does it in his movies, which hints to him knowing a bit more. He does all the low kicks. I've seen that. So you can assume he knows a bit more than before.
So fight will be also depending on when we are talking about. Like...
While Dolph, I'm getting the impression he hasn't really expanded beyond the Kyokushin Kai, apart from the boxing match. So this day and age, I think Jean-Claude has somewhat of an advantage just because Dolph has gotten old.
Faster
Than Jean-Claude. Yeah.
What do you think about this? Street fight. Now.
I think I would love for them to get together and do some sparring and film it.
Old guys.
That would be really cool.
I would love to see it because we made all these theories about how it would go. Would it really go that way? Would it be an in and out?
It would be really cool to get Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren to actually defend
this,
themselves and talk comment on this.
But just see, because you can see, right? Would he go in? Would he do this? What would actually happen? It would be very interesting to see. And for all that we know, maybe they have sparred,
Maybe,
on a movie set or something.
They've done
like that.
3 movies at least together. No, 4 maybe. Universal Soldiers, Blackwater, Universal Soldiers 3, and Universal Soldiers 4. It might be more, but that's...
Wait, they're in 3 Universal Soldiers movies together? What?
In all of them except for 2. The one with Scott Adkins, you still have both Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph.
Really?
Yeah. Dolph
Okay.
is the guy with a painted face and with this army of soldiers.
Okay, but we
Okay.
digress.
Yeah. Yes, that's a different topic. Okay. I really didn't want it to end up like 3-3, but in any case, we can... I hope you liked the style thing we did. And yeah, Street Fight, it's also... I would say back then, Dolph. Right now, Jean-Claude.
But 2009, I'm not sure. I think
2009, I'm
think
not sure
Dolph,
either. Maybe
yeah.
Dolph, yeah. Probably Dolph. So what is it then, like? 8-7? Doesn't matter.
Just screw it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, what do you think? Who do you think would win what? And
Let us know in the comments.
yeah. And hope you liked the video. So, alright, that's it.
That's it.
I have an interesting question for you guys. So, who would win a fight between Michael J. White and Wesley Snipes?
Video for the next time.
Sure.
I gotta call this friend of mine, Wolf Duncan.
Oh no. I've heard about him. Alright, guys. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Den er mye lengre enn 42.
Men det var on topic utenom, jeg begynte å spørre Juni, så
Hva er han på?